I forgot how much I love the NFL draft. I forgot since last year's draft how much I enjoyed the NFL draft and just being a bum on the couch, soaking up all the information, all the highlights, and all the speculation and the execution of building NFL franchises. It's fascinating. It is tremendous. So the NFL draft is in the books. It's not 1956, so there's not 52 rounds. There's only 7. There's not the 12 or 14 rounds that I grew up with. There's 7 rounds of the draft, and that's enough. Right around 256 picks. Typically, there are some compensatory picks that add to that. I don't know what the final number was, but it's typically 256, and Mr. Irrelevant is somewhere beyond that. Welcome into the Voice of College Football here at the Voice of College Football. We ask that you would like the videos before you ever get settled, as Lewis is reminding everyone in the live chat, before you get settled and enjoying the conversation in the live chat or calling me, 860-499-3332. Give us a like. Even if you don't agree with me, if you enjoy what we do here each and every day in providing college football content, discussion, debate, and analysis, then please give us a like. Also, contribute a number of other ways. Share the videos out on social media. Share this link right now. Get some more folks in here to talk NFL draft and college football. And you can also contribute by doing your shopping on Amazon using the link in the description section of any of the videos. And you can contribute as well on Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search MarkRogersTV. All right, let's get revved up with the NFL draft. And as we did it last night, I went through every pick of the first, 3 rounds, because we had round 1 on Thursday night. We had rounds 2 and 3 last night. I went through every pick and gave you my thoughts on every pick of the NFL draft. Don't watch a whole lot of Group of 5 football and no FCS football, so I had nothing to say about those student athletes who are now professionals, but everybody else I did. And then we got wrapped up in your calls, as is the case. You produce the show. Ultimately, you produce the show. So give us a call at 860-499-3332. The number will be posted on the bottom ticker in just a second, as we continue to remind you to shop Amazon using the link in the description section of all the videos. Amazon is in caps. The link next to it is the link we need you to use to contribute to the channel. It's exactly the same shopping experience. Let's see who's online. David Knight, good to see you, sir. Lewis, reminding everyone to hit the like button and share the tar out of this. I couldn't have said it better. Lewis, we wish we had you on right now to just deliver it just like that. And I may have to steal that line in the future. Share the tar out of this link. Thank you. David Knight, the sun is setting on Memorial Stadium. Yes, we are not just focused on the NFL draft. I have DVR'd the Nebraska and Minnesota spring games. Notre Dame also today. I was not able to find that online, but hopefully I'm going to be able to watch the Notre Dame spring game later, in which the new quarterback, Tyler Buckner, was live. Brian Kelly had announced during a news conference sometime in the last couple of weeks that their third string and future, most likely future quarterback, was going to be the one live quarterback, because he didn't play in 2020 due to COVID. Not him personally having COVID, but based on the cancellation of the season. And Brian Kelly wanted to see him mix it up with the other players and see him live. So we can talk spring football. I did not get a chance to see much of Minnesota, Nebraska, or Notre Dame at all. I did DVR the Minnesota, Nebraska games, and I will get to those. But I had the NFL draft on most of the afternoon. I got outside for a little sunshine mid-afternoon and ran some errands and so forth, but watched most of the NFL draft. And again, I will be catching up with the Nebraska and Minnesota spring games at hopefully Notre Dame later tonight. And we expect to catch up with a number of contributors on Sunday to wrap up spring football around the country. College football addict. I'm not high on Notre Dame this year. I love the NFL draft as well. Mark. Love it. Love it. If I could clone myself, I'd start an NFL channel. Mr. HD. Marvin Wilson and Tamorrion Terry went undrafted. And that's the harsh reality of the NFL draft. There are only so many spots, and there are a number of players in which most of us are unfamiliar because they played at small schools, but they have the productivity and the upside and the measurables to get drafted, to be projected as possible impact pros, while guys that we're familiar with being big players in college. And for Marvin Wilson and Tamorrion Terry, they were big players in high school, projected to be big players in college, and they were to a certain extent, although Wilson, of course, was a huge, enormous disappointment in 2020. And Terry never had a quarterback who could get him the ball consistently. So we see it all the time where players are not drafted that we are very familiar with. There's just not a whole lot of room there to draft all those guys when you consider there's not a large discrepancy between a fifth rounder, let's say, and a guy who did not get drafted, who's going to be one of the first guys to get a phone call and be invited to NFL camps. It's a razor thin evaluation, and it's based on need, and it's based on, again, a razor thin evaluation at that point. So don't think that the guys in the seventh round are exceedingly worse than the guys in the fifth or the sixth round, because they're not. And if they played a couple more games or a couple less games, or the evaluation went differently, or if the drafting order went differently, the number of guys that are drafted in the fifth, sixth, and seventh rounds would go differently. We see it all the time where guys plummet throughout the draft, and guys who are projected higher drop. Other guys get snatched up way too soon, or what was apparently way too soon based on the analysis and based on the projection. Happens all the time. Turn around. This would be our new sponsor, Manscaped. That's what I'm turning around to see. Manscaped. Please go to manscaped.com. Check out the products there. They are smooth and effective. So I would not promote anything I haven't used. And so I've used it for about a couple months. Used their product for a couple months. And yes, they are remarkable. So go to Manscaped and use our promo code. There it is. Mark 1 at manscaped.com. Get 20% off plus free shipping. There we go. PKL, great to see Nebraska had a ton of fans in the stands. 36,000 in attendance at Memorial Stadium. Mr. HD, they were projected first rounders. The Mike Norvell cost those boys millions. Not necessarily understanding of that. Yes, we've got issues with the sunset coming through the window at this time of day. And it is just about to drop behind the Connecticut skyline. The beautiful, wonderful Connecticut skyline. Yes, they are. They're going after everyone. I got to tell you, I'd never heard of the operation. They contacted me, sent me some product, and it is impressive. Otherwise, I wouldn't be touting it, but I've been using it every day for a couple months. So I thought I would wait until I could fully endorse it. And so there it is. Go to manscaped.com and you get 20% off. Yes, smooth. 20% off if you use the promo code Mark1. Easy to remember, Mark1. Hi, Sue. Yes, a sponsor. We need more, many more, or maybe just a huge one. Somebody that's just going to pay all the bills. Tulsa won the draft. Wampus 75. Did they really? I believe, as we know, Alabama won the first round. So Alabama won the quality. Alabama won the quality portion of the draft with those 6 first rounders, which tied Miami. And then we've got, I believe Ohio State had the most drafted. I know between Ohio State, Alabama, and Georgia, they were all right up there. I'm guessing that our conference count, which I'm always into, is going to be what it typically is, that the SEC had the most players drafted. The Big Ten, by the looks of the players coming off the board, I would think that the Big Ten was going to be right there as well. And then it was going to drop off quite a bit after that. Oh, Cheryl. Oh, Sue. Yes. Ladies. Give me some lady sponsorships there, Cheryl and Sue. You could do that, and we can promote some finer things for the ladies out there. Although I would be a bit embarrassed too. We would have to get a co-host, which I did have a show about 5 years ago. I doubt if any of you were around, but I would say for about 4 to 5 months, at least 4 to 5 months, maybe longer than that, close to a year, we had a weekly show with a young lady as co-host. All right, the NFL draft. And the spring games. If you got any comments about the spring games, the number is 860-499-3332. And so there it is. And let me remind everyone that, yes, our sponsor is Manscaped. What happened to all my fancy graphics? They're gone, unfortunately. Okay. Sue says she makes jewelry and sculpture, but I don't think I can afford you. If you can't afford me, you can't afford anyone. I am low maintenance, way low maintenance. Again, sponsorship. Remember, sponsorship. Yes, it's just me, Tim79. Mark's into house. All right. Pick number 1 in the 4th round. Overall number 106, Jacksonville, Jay Tufele, defensive tackle from USC. Michael Carter, the second of the North Carolina duo in the backfield, went to the Jets at number 107. Michael Carter. Javonte Williams was the beast, but Michael Carter wasn't far behind and probably a better pass catcher. Darren Hall, cornerback, San Diego State, to the Atlanta Falcons. Tennessee took Dez Fitzpatrick, the wide receiver from Louisville, who was pretty productive there. Cleveland went with offensive tackle James Hudson from Cincinnati. And Cincinnati and the improvement in their program started to show in this NFL draft. Did you notice how many Cincinnati players were taken? The other program that I noticed having a number of players come off the board on defense in particular, and along the offensive line, and at running back in Larry Roundtree, was Missouri. And I thought, why hasn't Missouri been better? At pick 111, Cincinnati took Cameron Sample, edge rusher from Tulane. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who we saw make a ton of plays. Big, lanky, long receiver from USC, went to the Lions. Derek Barnes, linebacker from Purdue, goes to the Lions as well, as they had back-to-back picks. Drew Dahlman, Stanford center, goes to the Atlanta Falcons. Jabril Cox, linebacker from LSU, to the Dallas Cowboys, as the LSU Tigers, of course, had their share of drafted players. Aesthetics, Hardstyle, thank you so much for the compliment there. We'll take it. Love the channel. Again, our number is 860-499-3332. Ellerson G. Smith off the edge. Northern Iowa goes to the Giants. Then the Rams took Bobby Brown, defensive tackle from Texas A&M, one of only two players off the two-deep defense at Texas A&M to be lost to the NFL draft. Bobby Brown, a defensive tackle, and linebacker Buddy Johnson. So Texas A&M is stacked on defense this year. At pick number 13 in the fourth round, the Chargers took Chris Rumpf from Duke off the edge. Kene Nwangwu, the running back from Iowa State. So Iowa State, in addition to Breece Hall, had another draftable player at running back in Kene Nwangwu going to the Vikings. Ramondre Stevenson, the leading rusher at Oklahoma, was taken up after scoring 7 touchdowns last year for the Sooners, goes to New England. Jacksonville, very interesting, of course, their draft as they try to build it around Trevor Lawrence. Takes an edge rusher in Jordan Smith out of UAB. Tyler Shelvin, who had the best run stuff rate in the nation in 2019 when LSU won the national championship. Tyler Shelvin goes to Cincinnati to join, Cincinnati, the Bengals love LSU. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Tyler Shelvin, 3 drafted players in the last 2 years from LSU go to the Bengals. Eagles took Zech McPherson from Texas Tech, a cornerback. Boise State tight end John Bates goes to the Washington football team. Then the Minnesota Vikings took Cameron Bynum, the cornerback from Cal. Chuba Hubbard, who was the nation's leading rusher in 2019, fell off, didn't have quite as a productive season this year. From Oklahoma State goes to Carolina. Indianapolis took Kylan Granson, tight end from SMU. You got Dan Moore, offensive tackle, goes to Texas A&M as the Aggies lost most of its offensive line. 4 of 5 go to the pros from that 2019 Texas A&M offensive line. They're going to have to rebuild. Kenyon Green is their lone leftover, and he's moving from guard to tackle. Jalen Darden, wide receiver from North Texas, and the Mean Green goes to Tampa Bay. The Rams, Robert Rochelle, cornerback, goes by way of Central Arkansas. Tylan Wallace, who sat out the second half of the bowl game against Miami after he did some big damage in the first half. Tylan Wallace, always impressive for Oklahoma State. First recruited and signed by LSU, goes to the Baltimore Ravens. Tommy Togiai, Buckeye fans. Tommy Togiai, who was sorely missed in the national championship game. The Browns take him at pick number 132. And how about Ian Book? David Knight, Ian Book goes to a good spot. Sean Payton can coach quarterbacks, can scheme offenses, and they've got a offense with the Saints that protects the quarterback, gets the ball out of his hands, lets the receivers do the work, and Ian Book is cut out for that. He can use his mobility, and he can also get the ball out of his hand, make quick decisions, and not be called upon to make ridiculous throws on a regular basis. Ian Book, Notre Dame quarterback, goes to the Saints. Janarius Robinson from Florida State off the edge, taken by the Minnesota Vikings. So despite the issues at Florida State, they still had some drafted players in, we're going to see Joshua Kendo here pretty soon, and Amari Gaynor. And, of course, Asante Samuel was drafted. Rashad Weaver, who was part of that devastating Pitt front four that led the nation in sacks the last 2 years, goes to Tennessee. The Arizona Cardinals take Marco Wilson. Maybe he'll chuck a few shoes there with the Cardinals. From Florida, Oklahoma cornerback Trey Brown goes to Seattle. Josh Ball, offensive tackle from Marshall, goes to the Dallas Cowboys. Deontay Smith from East Carolina goes to Cincinnati. You got Buddy Johnson, linebacker to Texas A&M. I just talked about him a few minutes ago. He and Bobby Brown, the two guys lost off the defense there at Texas A&M. Question coming in from College Football Addict. Who was your steal of the draft? Man, I'd have to go team by team. My steal of the draft. Let me answer that at a later date. Nothing's really jumping out at me necessarily as a steal. If somebody jumps out at me, I'll let you know. And if I go team by team, I'll let you know who I believe had a great draft. The Rams took Jacob Harris, the wide receiver from UCF. The Packers took Royce Newman, the guard from Ole Miss, who he's going to be blocking for at quarterback. Who knows? Tyree Gillespie, the safety from Mizzou. There's a Mizzou defender. We were talking about that. To the Raiders. And then the Chiefs, Joshua Kando, defensive end from Florida State, who had all sorts of injury issues. Did Joshua Kando. Round number 5. Shaun Wade back in the slot. Yes. Good question, Sue. I think that's pretty obvious that here is a player that is not very adaptable from position to position. He went from being one of the best slot coverage corners in college football to, I don't want to say one of the worst guys on the outside, but he was pretty atrocious. And one of the bigger jokes of an award this past season was that Shaun Wade won Defensive Back of the Year in the Big Ten. Shaun Wade, 2020 Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year. Now, if that wasn't based on reputation, I don't know. Who were these people watching? Who voted? And they should be stripped of their voting rights. I tweeted this afternoon after I saw that Shaun Wade, and I didn't remember that after the season, that he was voted the Defensive Back of the Year in the conference, that the rumor that nobody watches Northwestern football must be true. Because Northwestern definitely had 2 defensive backs better than Shaun Wade this last year. And that's just one team. It's just me. Tim 79 goes with Shaun Wade as a safety. He does tackle. He looks so out of sync and demoralized this past season as opposed to what the player that he was the previous season. And it was so disappointing to see, because here he was after the 2019 season in which he was unceremoniously led off the field against Clemson in a questionable way after the targeting call on Trevor Lawrence. But he was a borderline, most likely late first-round pick who decides to come back and play, and I respect him for that. And then with all the issues involving the Big Ten and their inability to make a decision, be decisive, devise a plan, follow through, where they caved in and then were brought to accountability by the fans, by the players, by the coaches to play football. Shaun Wade decides to come back, gets moved to the outside, which of course was already the plan, and does not take to that. And I think once he realized that he could not play as effectively on the outside, it demoralized him. And he just did not have any urgency to his game. In addition to getting beat on the outside, he just turned into a very passive player. Very passive player. And if he was going to be selected in the NFL draft just based on what he did this past season, I can't imagine that he would have been drafted. But the measurables are there. The track record as a slot cover corner is there. And then the performance as a tackler, as a willing tackler, even though he's pretty slight. He does tackle. All right, speaking of the Buckeyes, round number 5 started with the Buckeye selection in Luke Farrell, who will be coached by a familiar face there in Jacksonville, the guy that recruited him and signed him. Pick number 2 in the 5th round went to the Jets and Jamian Sherwood, the safety from Auburn. Now, you talk about a guy that lays the wood. That guy runs downhill and smacks people. Big hitter at Auburn. All right, Houston Texans, Brevin Jordan, tight end from Miami, who our buddy Cam Underwood would tell you is the best tight end in college football. The best pure tight end in college football. There were a number of tight ends drafted in front of Brevin Jordan, started by Kyle Pitts of Florida, of course, and then Hunter Long of Boston College also drafted in front of Brevin Jordan, and Pat Freiermuth of Penn State. To Cam's defense, a number of the analysts on ESPN also said that Brevin Jordan was underrated. Atlanta took Taquan Graham, the defensive tackle from Texas, spotty player. Now we get to the position in the draft where guys are not as consistent. They're typically as good at their peak level. Typically, not everyone, but typically these are guys that are just as good as the first rounders and the second rounders at their peak. But they showed it this game, that play, here and there, but we're not consistently excellent. Evan McPherson, the kicker from Florida, and one of the great exchanges during the entire draft weekend was between my man Mel Kiper and Todd McShay talking about Kiper scouting kickers. It was phenomenal. So Cincinnati drafts the Florida kicker, Evan McPherson, and Todd McShay's pretty much just going through how effective he was at Florida, but also stating, hey, this is what I hear. This is what my draft, my kicking analysts, my kicking gurus that I rely on, this is what they tell me. I'm just repeating what they say. I don't scout kickers. And then Kiper chimes in and says, what are you talking about? This guy has a leg swing that's very similar to Jason Elam. And they're all like, what? You evaluate leg swing on a kicker, truly? And Kiper's like, absolutely, I do. It was hilarious. And then McShay's like, you're lying, Kiper. You don't scout kickers. And Mel Kiper said something like, Evan McPherson is my 4th rated kicker that I've ever scouted in 43 years. Yes, I watch every kick in college football, or he made some kind of claim like that. I love the back and forth between Kiper and McShay. Love it. All right. Philadelphia took Kenneth Gainwell, the running back from Memphis, who I believe opted out in 2020, but had a productive 2019. Really good back. Chicago, Larry Borum, another Missouri player. So Barry Odom, no longer with Mizzou, lost his job there as head coach, but recruited well and developed pretty well. Caden Stern, safety from Texas, underachieved there, goes to the Broncos. Cleveland Browns take Tony Fields, the linebacker from West Virginia, and that guy will hit. Started off his career at Arizona, is more of a run defending linebacker, maybe a little bit lost in today's NFL. The Jets took Michael Carter, the cornerback from Duke. San Francisco, Jalen Moore, the offensive tackle from Western Michigan. Isaiah Loudermilk, defensive end from Wisconsin. Pretty impressive player. Goes to Pittsburgh. This guy is going to be an intriguing player if he's utilized the right way. Vikings, Amir Smith-Marset out of Iowa. He can pick him up and lay him down. But his skill set is pretty sketchy, and he doesn't necessarily show the consistency. He disappears at times, and he's not a polished route runner, and he dropped something like 19 passes in his career. Amir Smith-Marset, burner, goes to the Vikings. Davion Nixon, defensive tackle from Iowa. The Hawkeyes have 2 consecutive selections there. Davion Nixon. Then Nebraska chimes in with Brendan Hymus, the offensive tackle, going to the Chargers to protect Justin Herbert. There's the Shaun Wade selection at number 160 to Baltimore. We talked about Shaun Wade, if you're just joining us now. Kansas City and Noah Gray, tight end from Duke. Duke with 3 selections there in round number 5. Washington takes Derek Forrest, the safety from Cincinnati, and there we see more Cincinnati players again. Those are my 2 teams this weekend that caught my eye in the college ranks, would be the Cincinnati Bearcats and the Mizzou Tigers. Another Cincinnati player on defense and in the secondary, Denver, Jamar Johnson. Love this guy. He can play. Jamar Johnson, safety from Indiana. Big plays all around. Explosive player, ball hawk. Indianapolis Colts takes Sean Davis, the safety from Florida. Very talented player. Keith Taylor, cornerback of Washington. And somebody had commented to me today that actually, in speaking about DBU, Ohio State, LSU, Florida, USC, Miami, Florida State, et cetera, down through the years, Washington could make its bid as DBU. Nate Hobbs, a cornerback from Illinois, very explosive player, fast player, goes to the Vegas Raiders. Well, can't comment on the Central Missouri tight end, Zach Davidson, to Minnesota. The Cleveland Browns take a veteran leader here, Richard LeCounte, out of Georgia. Limited skill set, limited upside, but a gamer, leader, tough guy. Richard LeCounte, Georgia. Garrett Wallow, really good player at TCU. Linebacker, goes to the Texans. Edge rusher Dalen Hayes of Notre Dame goes to the Baltimore Ravens. Diamadore Lenore, the cornerback from Oregon, goes to San Francisco. Green Bay takes Tadarius Slayton, the defensive tackle from Florida. Ernest Brown, defensive end from Northwestern. Another Wildcat going, this time to the Rams. Jets, Jason Pinnock takes the cornerback from Pitt. Why was Pitt not better? KJ Britt, linebacker. This guy's pretty limited, but he's a thumper too. KJ Britt, linebacker, Auburn, goes to the Buccaneers. Cameron McGrone, Michigan fans, another guy that probably should have produced more at Michigan, goes to the Patriots. Let's finish out the round, and then I'll take your comments and questions. And, of course, the phone lines are open. We've got a call coming in. Let's take it. Got David Greenshield on the line. David, welcome to the Voice of College Football. How's it going?
Mark Rogers, how are you, sir?
I am doing well. What's on your mind today?
So, I checked out right around the 5th, I think beginning of the 6th round. What was the final tally on Buckeyes drafted? I think when I left off, it was 9. Did you see?
I know they made it to 10 at least. I don't know.
Was it Hilliard or Cooper or Borland? Was that one of the 10th player?
Cooper went.
Oh, okay. Maybe that was the 10th guy. Jonathan Cooper?
Yes.
Okay. I saw that Shaun Wade went in the 5th round. Do you believe that, Mark?
In terms of should he have gone that high or?
Well, just talk about a drop.
Oh, yeah.
1 year period of time.
Mm-hmm.
If he comes out last year, Mark, he's a first round draft pick.
Probably.
So, which, would have been impressive. Ohio State would have had 3 first round draft picks at corner in one draft last year. Talk about a rough year and costly one.
Yeah, a rough year, a costly year. And I'm not going to pin this entirely on the Ohio State coaching staff, especially considering what they had to deal with, just like everybody else in the offseason and not having the time. on the field to determine what they had. But of course, nobody was able to determine that he couldn't go to the outside and play.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the common theory, Mark. It's moving from slot corner to the outside. He just did not adjust well. I know that there's some people that are saying that, you know, he had some health issues as well. But yeah, I mean, playing outside, it was rough. I mean, that Indiana game was rough to begin with. And of course, I mean, Alabama, I mean, forget about it.
I couldn't believe when I saw today, and maybe this just bypassed me at the time because I don't really keep up with postseason awards, but he was named the defensive back of the year in the Big Ten.
Mark, that might be an indictment on the cornerback. And you know what? Northwestern produces a first-round corner in Newsom to my Cleveland Browns. Shaun Wade goes in the 5th round, but Shaun Wade is the Big Ten defensive back of the year.
Well, I mean, and that's what
help me out on that one.
As soon as I saw that, I tweeted that the rumor that nobody watches Northwestern football must be true, because they had 2 defensive backs that were better than Shaun Wade, and I'm not even taking into account the rest of the conference. And Shaun Wade, I don't even know if he played in a backfield secondary that was disappointing across the board. I don't even know if Shaun Wade was the best defensive back. If we're just looking at performance on the field, not knowing what their names are or how they played in 2019, if we're just judging what they did on the field in 2020, I don't think he was the best defensive back on his team.
Yeah, you're right. Sevyn Banks might have even been better last year.
He probably was. The guy.
It was.
Yep.
I just think that it's a shame. I mean, they obviously that was the ultimate downfall as we saw in the last game of the year, unfortunately. But and maybe the biggest concern going into this year for them, in my view. But I will say a little bit more about the draft. I was pleasantly surprised that Pete Werner went into the 2nd round. I was a little bit surprised by that.
I was surprised when our Buckeye contributors said last week that he was getting that kind of love, and they were projecting that he would go in the 2nd or 3rd round. And I said, really, Pete Werner? And then it came to roost.
Mm-hmm.
The analysis was interesting to hear between Mel Kiper and Louis Riddick. So when Pete Werner was drafted, Louis Riddick said, despite what he ran in the 40, which helped his draft stock, he ran a 4.58, I believe was the time, that Louis Riddick had no confidence of him playing in space in coverage. And Mel Kiper argued with Riddick about it. And Riddick said, this guy's a traditional linebacker who reads the blocking schemes and gets to the ball carrier and needs to be given a pass rush role most of the time against the pass because he can't cover guys in space. And Kiper was like, he ran a 4.58. He can cover guys. He just needs to be coached. And so they had a bit of a back and forth about Pete Werner.
Right. Well, I mean, I thought his coverage skills were decent, Mark, not great. I mean, if you're just the linebacker you're describing, in my view, is more Tough Borland, which is more of a, like 1990s linebacker that's, basically there to defend the I formation. He's that type of guy. Whereas I think I think Warner is more capable of playing in space. I don't know how that'll translate to the NFL, because the NFL is a whole different kind of deal, but we'll see. I did want to say, by the way, the Notre Dame linebacker that went to my Cleveland Browns, very impressed. I don't know what your Notre Dame people think. Did they project him? Because I saw a lot of mock drafts that had him as a 1st-round draft pick.
Yeah, that was very much a value pick based on all the mock. Yeah. And I'm not a mock draft guy, but I had heard specifically about him that he was a borderline 1st-rounder.
Right.
I don't know who to compare him to. I, of course, saw him play a number of times, but wasn't really focused on his game. But, I think that was a surprise that he was still there for them to take Owusu Koromoa, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. Yes.
I was going to lean on you for that one, Mark.
Well, I couldn't even remember yeah, it took me a second to even align the letters in my head before I attempted to pronounce it. But yeah, so were you happy with the Browns draft?
I was. I mean, I think Newsom can be a solid corner. I think that, just not knowing what the situation is going to be with Greedy Williams this year. And, even if he becomes the Browns nickel corner, I think, especially in today's day and age of the NFL, I think you have to have at least 3 corners to defend the pass. So whether he be one of the top 2 corners, whether he be a nickel corner, I think it's a pretty solid pick. And then obviously I'm really excited about the linebacker in the second round. So, and those were the 2 of the bigger needs coming in was the back 7 of the defense. So I saw some of their later round picks. I know they got a receiver in the later rounds, but that was about all that I saw. I don't know if you saw what they got in maybe the 3rd or the 4th.
Let me see here. I watched most of the draft today, but not every second. I did notice during the coverage, since we've had our share of Justin Fields conversations through the years, over the past couple of years, that Louis Riddick on a number of occasions could not be more condemning of the Chicago Bears offensive line. He just feels as though it's atrocious. So that's my only concern about Justin Fields. And to his credit, that must be the case because they drafted 2 offensive linemen right after Justin Fields. That was their next 2 picks.
Well, here's where I was going to go with this, Mark, and I was going to get to Justin. And I'm all too happy to talk to him over the last couple of weeks. We've been talking about him. Obviously, everybody really has. I know leading into this. I commented on your live stream, during your draft party, that I thought that Denver. Atlanta and San Francisco would have been the better situations, obviously, because of, I think, the players he would have been surrounded with, especially in Atlanta. I think he could have sat behind Matt Ryan. Obviously, he could have gone home. He's from Georgia. He could have sat behind Matt Ryan for a little period of time. He would have inherited a team with really good wide receivers, I think, to start. So I thought that would have been a really good situation. And I actually think Denver could have even been a better situation than Chicago, to be honest with you, because Denver really built up their offense around Drew Lock. It was just Drew Lock that ended up being the problem there. And I thought that could have been a very good situation for him, even better than Chicago. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, that was the worst of the situations for him. It really was. If you just look at personnel, both at the offensive line and in the skill positions. Yes.
Right. I mean, I guess Allen Robinson is one of the better receivers in football. So, I'll have him. But after that, it is lacking.
It is lacking. So. Yes. So the wide receiver that you allude to that the Browns selected was a guy that we're pretty familiar with, Anthony Schwartz out of Auburn. He's got Olympic track speed. He specialized in the bubble screens and the jet sweeps at Auburn. A lot of that.
Okay. So kind of like a gadget guy to a certain extent.
Yeah, he's not a real polished receiver.
Okay. There's room for those types in the NFL. I mean, those guys are getting utilized more and more in today's NFL. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, the Browns receiver position, they get OBJ back. They have Landry. I think Peoples-Jones, the former Michigan guy's got some potential going forward. I thought he showed some playmaking ability last year. So, that's a position I think they were just looking to add depth to.
And you also have Tommy Togiai going to the Browns.
Yeah, I think that's a good move because from what I'm hearing, they might lose Sheldon Richardson at defensive tackle. So, he's a chance that he might get a chance to play in a rotation maybe.
Yeah, all the guys that they
So,
selected are very recognizable names. Tony Fields, linebacker, West Virginia; Richard LeCount, the safety from Georgia; and Demetric Felton, the wide receiver from UCLA, were their final 3 picks after Togiai.
what was your evaluation on LeCount? I watched a few Georgia games. I thought he was a guy that might have gone a little bit higher than he did.
Yeah, he's played a lot of football. Like, he's been a mainstay in their secondary. He was a captain,
Right.
a very dependable player, and very well thought of as a leader, as a guy that did make mistakes, as a guy that was durable, stayed on the field, played again from the time he stepped on campus. He was pretty much a starter from the beginning. In watching the
Right.
tape on him and hearing the draft analysts, they just said that there's really nothing outstanding about him that projects to the NFL level. That he's a decent athlete, of course, to play at that kind of program, but projecting to the NFL, he's pretty much a backup guy, a special teams guy, going to know the defense as well as anybody, going to make all the right calls, know where he's supposed to be a leader, but athletically just nothing special to project to be a likely starter.
Yeah, I guess, Mark, I'm just looking at it from the perspective from a guy that played at a major program in Georgia, played that much football in the SEC at a high level. You would just think a guy like that would project higher than what, the 5th round? I mean, it just, you know, I mean, in general terms, you know, I mean, you tell me, you give me like a description of that player, and I would think a player like that would go higher than the 5th round, just in general terms.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. You know, I think my Browns have had a very good offseason in general with some of the moves that they've made to improve their defense. So, very optimistic season for the Browns going forward this year. I know you're a Browns fan, right, Mark? I know you gave up your Dallas Cowboys fandom a long time ago. So,
yeah, I'm a Browns fan. I don't have a huge investment in their success. It wouldn't move me one way or the other if they went 11-5 or 5-11 last year or next year. If they won the Super Bowl, it wouldn't be the best day of my life. I don't know how to describe it, except I enjoy the NFL as much as I do college football, truth be known. And
really?
they're technically in some ways I enjoy it more, but technically, technically they're my favorite team, but they don't have my heart. It doesn't matter to me. I don't watch them play on Sundays. I watch the I don't get the games where I live, and I don't make any kind of special move to get the games. I just watch the red zone and watch whatever is presented to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your Cowboys fandom ended once Jerry Jones let go of Coach Landry, then, right?
Yeah, that was many years ago, and since then I've just watched the NFL.
Yeah,
but
there were a lot of Cowboys. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I technically, if somebody asked me, would identify myself as a Browns fan, but there's not a whole lot of passion in that statement.
Okay. Well, I'll let you know, the people of northeastern Ohio, and you know this from being from this area, Mark, have been waiting for this for a long period of time. So we're trying to be very optimistic here. So we live in hope.
I think when they stepped on the field against the Chiefs, I think that was the most interested in a Browns game. So from the time that they came back in 1999, I would have been interested in any team that was resurrected from the dust. Of course, as you well know, that was an unprecedented move for the NFL to do that for a city, to say we are reinstating the team, the name, the colors, the tradition, the records. It all goes back to Cleveland. And this team that moved is no longer that. That's just, I don't think people really realize the significance of that. The Rams have moved all over the place. The Cardinals have moved all over the place. Well, they took everything with them when they moved, but that did not happen. The NFL, rightly so, understood and took action against the injustice against the city of Cleveland and reinstated the entire franchise to Cleveland, as opposed to allowing it to go with the original franchise to Baltimore. And so I kind of forced myself to be a Browns fan coming back. I was intrigued by the NFL taking that stance. And then I thought, well, I'm an Indians fan. I'm a Buckeyes fan. I'm a somewhat of a Cavs fan. So I'm going to be a Browns fan. And, but it just never took hold, and they were never any good. And that really has never impacted my fandom. Like, I was an Indians fan forever and they were awful. And I was an ardent, fervent Indians fan, regardless. I was the guy that watched game number 155 when they were 31 games out of first place. And that didn't affect my fandom one way or the other. But with the Browns, it was just hard to pick up on them, since they just were never playing meaningful football. And then I remember, and I'm sure you will, that they had a stretch with Eric Mangini as head coach where they beat the Patriots, right? And the Giants, and they played a really close game against the Jets when they were good. They had a bit of a hot streak there, and it looked like they had something rolling there. And I don't know when that was.
I remember that.
08, 09? Of course, 07 was a good year with Derek Anderson at quarterback. 10-6. Yeah, almost made the playoffs. If they would have had some things break the right way elsewhere, the final weekend of the season, they would have made the playoffs. And Derek Anderson, had the big year. But it was another year in there. 05, 06, I forget. It would have been after that, right? Anyway, I remember Mangini was the head coach. Maybe it was 2010, whatever it was.
Yeah, I think it was.
I think it was. That I got vaguely interested. And then nothing after that. When they drafted Johnny Manziel, I was intrigued by that. Of course, that didn't work out.
No.
And then with building this team, once Baker Mayfield got there and they put some things together and they showed, really what it was not a player acquisition, but when they brought in, I can't think of the guy's name, the general manager from Kansas City to run the show.
Dorsey.
Yes. When they brought him in, I looked at his track record. I thought, maybe they've got something going here. Maybe that got me excited. And they started to acquire some free agents that seemed to be smart acquisitions and started to draft a little bit better. And I didn't know necessarily if Baker Mayfield was going to turn out, but it appears as though he has. And, they've turned into something. And so I say all that to get to the Kansas City game. Once they beat the Steelers, and I didn't give them much chance against Kansas City, but they hung in the game. And I was more excited to see that game than any Cleveland Browns game, maybe in history.
Well, I mean, they had a chance at the end once Mahomes went out, just couldn't quite get it done.
Yeah.
And, wouldn't you know, the last time they won a playoff game and made the divisional round, their head coach was who?
Bill Belichick.
Yeah. Do you remember who their defensive coordinator was?
So this would have been in the 94 game against the Patriots, right? You're talking about.
Correct.
Their defensive coordinator on that team. Hang on just a second. 94 defensive coordinator. It wasn't Romeo Crennel, was it? Who was it?
No, it was a guy by the name of Nick Saban.
Oh, Nick Saban was there. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep. But wouldn't you know, the last time they won a playoff game, they had a coach that won 6 Super Bowls and a coach that would go on to win 7 national championships, Mark. Who knew? There
is a fascinating documentary that I've seen on the NFL Network where I don't know how they acquired all this footage, but it's from meetings and practice sessions with that 95 Browns team that disintegrated. You've seen that? It's phenomenal with Saban and Belichick, Kirk Ferentz. Who else was on that staff? Anyway, there were a number of guys. Mancini, the coach who then became the Lions coach. Can't think of his name, but anyway.
Schwartz, I think,
yes,
was there too.
Yes, Schwartz. Right. All those guys together. Fascinating footage.
Oh yeah.
And just the irony of this great coaching staff led by two of the greatest of all time, as it would turn out, and then at the same time that coincided with the dissolvement of the franchise and the move. It's fascinating.
Yeah, Modell moving the team. Yeah,
good stuff.
Well, as always, a pleasure, Mark Rogers. It's always good to talk football with you, my friend.
Thank you so much, David. Have a good night.
You take care now. Bye-bye.
All right, we're at 860-499-3332 to talk the NFL draft. And also there was spring football today at Nebraska, Notre Dame, and elsewhere, Minnesota. I DVR'd those games. I was not able to watch them. I don't know where to find the Notre Dame game. It was on some type of periphery channel outlet from NBC. Jordan Bowman is letting us know that Jamie Newman, formerly of Wake Forest, who was about to be the Georgia quarterback, signed with the Eagles. And this is the time in which we're going to hear about all these free agents who were not drafted, who will sign free agent contracts to go to a mini camp and show what they can do. And it's pretty common thought that once you get to a certain place in the NFL draft, that it's almost better that you not get drafted and that you are able to field 5 or 6 or 7 calls. Now, the draft in and of itself, the draft selection guarantees that you're going to get the tryout. So that's the positive to getting drafted, of course, that once you aren't drafted, it's not a given that you're going to get a phone call. But if you're a player of the stature of a Jamie Newman, somebody's going to call, and most likely you're going to have 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 teams call, and then you'll have the opportunity to make a decision on what could be the right fit for you. There you go. There you go, Joe. Vinny Testaverde, Browns quarterback in 94. Yep. Then he went to Baltimore and was their starting quarterback, their first one. Felipe Franks, Arkansas, Florida, signs with the Falcons. Lewis Ian Book did get drafted by the New Orleans Saints, I believe, in round number 4 or 5. College football Jared is telling us that Richard LeCount would have gone higher, but got in that motorcycle accident, which caused him to run a 4.7 or whatever. Yeah, I would like to see the final tally. Joe Bo is telling us that it was a good draft for the American Conference. I would love to see a tally, and we will see these numbers come out soon. I would like to find them rather than have to add them up myself to see what schools had the most players drafted and then the conference totals. And we talked about this the other night, that the Big 12 had no draftees in the first round. Of course, Alabama led the way with 6. Nobody else had more than 2. Clemson, Miami, Northwestern, and a few others had 2 in the first round. And I believe Ohio State, some sequence of Ohio State, Alabama, and LSU were at the top of the draft board overall, and Georgia. And that's no surprise. So again, anybody who says that recruiting rankings mean nothing, they mean a lot if you care about winning at the collegiate level and also producing NFL players. Yes. the teams at the top of the recruiting rankings win the most games, and then they also produce the most NFL players. So scouting is not a perfect formula. It's not a science, but it's pretty darn close. It's in mass, in volume, effective. And is accurate. This whole Tim Tebow move seems like a bad one for Urban Meyer in Jacksonville. I just don't see the upside of that. I don't see the payoff. Even if Tim Tebow is the third best tight end you could sign and put on your roster, and he legitimately wins the job and is the third best tight end you're going to sign, because Tim Tebow, to me, there is no way he's a starting tight end in the NFL. Okay, so all the drawbacks would be, okay, maybe he does legitimately earn. He is, let's say you've got 6 tight ends in camp and he is the third best and you're going to keep 3. So he's the third best. And so bam, he's your third tight end. Okay. But can he play on special teams? I doubt it. Is he going to be a distraction? I can just about guarantee that. Not by any fault of his own, but he is going to gather, especially in that city in Florida, especially in that franchise that is starved for winning, and that city that loves him. There is going to be too much focus and emphasis on what Tim Tebow's doing. And it's not as though you've got a New England Patriots situation that can handle, because of the leadership that's in place, starting at the top, that can handle distractions. You don't need distractions. You won 1 game last year. It's just that the upside is that, and the downside is that. You don't need that. And it, again, has nothing to do with Tim Tebow not being a good person or a capable football player, possibly at this stage of his life. He's like 31 years old, too. Why? Why are you doing this? Centerpoint Media, Mark, I'm not talking about the draft or National Signing Day itself. I mean the way it is covered in the media. I don't know what you're alluding to. Probably a previous comment that I didn't see. All right, I believe we've got a tote board. There we go. Joe Bo lets us know that the SEC had 65 players taken, the Big Ten 44, the ACC 42, the Pac-12 28, the Big 12 22. Now, let's keep in mind, to be fair, to get a better reflection and indication of how those numbers truly stack up, you need to look at 2 things. Number one, the per team averages, because of course the Pac-12 and the Big 12 are at a disadvantage, only having 12 teams in the Pac-12 and 10 teams in the Pac-12, in the Big 12, as opposed to 14 in the other conferences. So 65 divided by 14, 44 divided by 14, and so on. So that gives you a better feel for, because the SEC, the Big Ten, and the ACC generally have what? 4 more teams, or 40% of a bigger league than the Big 12 does. So it's still a disappointing number for the Big 12. So that's one consideration to make, is that there are different numbers of teams in each league. And then the second would be, we would need to assign point totals to each round. And I'm guessing that the SEC's number would be even more impressive if we would do that. If we gave 7 points to first rounders, 6 points to second rounders, 5 points to third rounders, on down the line to 1 point for seventh rounders, then we could get a better feel for that. Maybe that's a little project for me tonight. Maybe a project for me tonight to analyze the draft when it comes to college football. I can't do it when it comes to the NFL. I can only keep up with so much. So when people ask me, was that a good draft for the Bears, or was that a good draft? I can analyze that from a college perspective, but I don't know what they need. I don't follow the NFL to the extent to know what these teams need. The bulk of the SEC players in the draft came from about 10 teams, don't you think? Well, I would think that that would be the case for everybody. That would be the case for everyone. There's going to be an elite team, and there's going to be a few others that had a number of players selected. Then it's going to drop off precipitously from there. Pizza, David Knight says, should be in my future. What time is it? It's about, we came on at 7 o'clock. It's got to be, about 8 o'clock. And I've got to keep looking at the clock. If I've got plenty of food to make right now, but I don't feel like cooking tonight, I keep putting it off. But unfortunately, with this crazy pandemic and all the ridiculous rules in these towns, this place is like a ghost town compared to what it used to be. I've got to constantly look at, I love Papa John's. Papa John's would be by far my favorite chain pizza. It's not necessarily my favorite pizza, but it's my favorite chain pizza. And I've got to be looking at the clock all the time to figure out, okay, everything's going to close at 9 o'clock. I can't go anywhere. Can't get anything unless I want to go to McDonald's, which no, I do that too much. All right, here's Ask and Ye Shall Receive. I get this from Jobo. Beautiful. Thank you. The SEC had 4.6 players drafted per team, the Big Ten at 3.1, which is a significant difference. The ACC at 3, the Pac-12 at 2.3, so not as quite the disparity in the Big 12 at 2.2. And then again, I'm going to look at this. I may break this down. And I know, David, I should go get myself a pizza, but if I don't break down numbers and produce videos, then I don't get paid. So that's what we got to do. And for as much as I would like to spend my time doing other things tonight, I should probably watch the Nebraska and Minnesota spring games and maybe the Notre Dame spring game if I can find it. Tomorrow, we're going to have conversations with Notre Dame and Iowa contributors, at least, if not some other folks, because we're usually here talking college football. And of course, the NFL draft was this weekend, and we hammered home spring games the last 2 Saturdays. But I did not get to see any spring football. I saw a few plays here and there, but and they're probably not even worth watching when it comes right down to it. Yeah, the In-N-Out, Center Point Media. I keep hearing about In-N-Out, and I don't think I've ever been to an In-N-Out. I don't believe. Yeah. I used to spend some time on the West Coast. But I don't believe I ever went to the In-N-Out. All right, we've got a call coming in. Somebody wants to talk about Cincinnati's NFL draft position and what they've done. Welcome to the Voice of College Football.
Hey, what's up, Mark? Dave.
Hey, Dave. What's going on?
Right. Hey, you should get some pizza. You can order it. Surely somebody's going to deliver that.
Yeah. The best place around here would be Vinny's. I'll give a plug to Vinny's. Maybe they could give me a sponsorship here.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. Hey, let me ask you this.
Yes,
this
sir.
Is just a comparison and contrast. I value your knowledge. You know, like when we go to the NFL draft, all the way leading up to, months ahead of time, you have many different people evaluating and interjecting their opinions, and there towards the end, it's like, all that pre-thought and everything doesn't mean anything. It may have been accurate on some accounts, and it's almost the same way about recruiting for college football. Your coaches do their due diligence, and they're picking out guys that your team would like to have, and you go after them, and hopefully they'll come and play for you, etc. How difficult is it, you think, to evaluate? Here's the main question. A college player coming from college football to play in the NFL, knowing that it's a much faster, much stronger game versus having a high school player, because you're going off, unless you were able to go watch in person and see the tape, because hey, I don't know if you ever watched a tape on high school recruits. They're not all made equally. A lot of them are kind of grainy and subpar, and others look very professional. So obviously, those players that are being taken that professional technology are going to look a bit better. But do you see what I'm getting at? I mean, what do you think is more difficult, to evaluate the college or the high school guys?
I don't even think it's close, David. I believe it's much more difficult to evaluate high school football players than it is college football players, and to make that transition from high school to college rather than college to the pros for two basic reasons. Number one, their physical maturity. So when you're a college scout or head coach or on a coaching staff evaluating high school football players, for one thing, most of them commit and are signed before they even play a senior season of high school football. So you're missing their most important and most indicative performance resume. You're missing that. You're not going to get to see that necessarily. What is the most relevant is how they're playing the most recently, and you're not even getting a chance to see that before you take a shot at these guys. So you're relying on them as sophomores and juniors. So that's number one. Number two would be there's a lot more variance to how much they're maturing physically and otherwise, but we'll just focus on physically, but also mentally and emotionally. How much they're maturing is much more of a wild card through those years of being 16, 17 years old versus being 21, 22 years old. There's still a growth and a maturity process that takes place between college and the NFL, but at that point, it's a lot less than it was 4 years earlier. When you talk about, as you well know, there are 15 and 16-year-olds that have almost fully matured, and they're not going to get much stronger, bigger, fill out anything. They've pretty much reached their physical maturity. Then there's other 15 and 16-year-olds who are nothing close to what they're going to be as 19 and 20-year-olds. And you don't know that. You can guess based on their frame and their build and what you've seen before, as opposed to, again, the transition from college to the NFL is certainly a gap, but physically, I don't think it's anywhere close, because just the male body has already matured and there's still some growth, but it's not, the percentage is minuscule compared to what it was 3 to 4 years earlier. And then the other category for me, David, would be the amount of time and analysis that's put into it, as opposed to what happens at the NFL level. So because of the safeguarding of the student athlete at the high school level, well, the coaches can only see them, talk to them so much. They can only evaluate them so much. They can only see them for certain periods of the year. They can only officially visit them at certain times. There are restrictions, and rightfully so, on how much access they have to them. And then they can only evaluate them on a smaller sample of games in high school versus college. Typically, they play less games in high school than they do in college. And also, the competition at the high school level is so sporadic versus in college, you've got an idea. Okay, this guy plays cornerback at Georgia. Well, we know what competition he plays. He was playing Florida this week. He's going to play LSU next week. And so the competition to evaluate him against is pretty standardized. You've got a very good idea of what that is, versus in high school, it's all over the place. And then the third one would be, to extend on that point, would just be, again, because of the time and the money and the resources that they have at the NFL level, to then have all these pro days and combines and the Senior Bowl practice where they can measure these guys to the nth degree, versus not having that type of access at the high school level. That's my thought.
Okay, let me ask you one more question. Now, when you're dealing with egos, okay, I'm sure that some high school kids, especially in the bigger cities and the larger programs, in high school, like Mater D, IMG Academy, and I know those are just a couple I could pull off my head. It's got to be a lot more, right? So these kids come highly equipped and they're highly touted. They're going to have some resemblance of an ego, right? But when you're talking about like a college kid who's attained a lot of accolades, when he goes to play pro football, and it may be like in the beginning, not so much because he just wants to be on an NFL team and get himself established. But which do you think, that ego is harder to difficult or to decipher, is more difficult to deal with than, is it the high school kid or is it the college kid moving into the NFL?
That's a good question. Well,
I mean, because they both have layers of ego, but it's hard to say which one is more established than the other.
Yeah, because on one hand, you would think at the high school level, most of these kids that are so good to be able to be recruited and signed at places like Ohio State and Penn State, Notre Dame on down the line, were so dominant in a high school and nobody barely challenged them ever, that their heads would swell. And I'm not even blaming them. That would swell to an nth degree because they were just so dominant and nobody could touch them. As opposed to college, even the best players in college have to really bust their tails to be the best. Like, they're not heads and shoulders above all these other guys. They're just really good at what they do. Najee Harris might be the best running back in college football, but it's not so ridiculous that he's just trampling over people. It's, there are
no, he hurdles people.
Well, he does hurdle people. Maybe he was a bad example. Yeah, maybe your Notre Dame guy needed to raise up there a little sooner. But
I think there's more than just him. I saw several plays. I was astounded. I was like, he did that to more than Nick McLeod. I was embarrassed for everybody.
Oh, well, in this day and age, that happens a couple times a week. So, but it's not like there's not 15 or 20 running backs out there that are nearly as good as he is. And again, he's not just trampling over defenses for 15 and 30-yard runs constantly.
No.
So to get a big head about how good you are, I wouldn't think would be as necessarily as common.
Yeah, and he seems well grounded because he bought some food for a homeless shelter.
That was impressive. Yep.
It really was. It was I've already become even though you hurdled one of my Irish guys, I'm already a fan of his because he did that. I really I thought that was really awesome of him to do that.
I thought so too. That's where he spent his NFL draft, serving the homeless. Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely.
Anyway, that's all I have, sir.
Well, thank you so much.
Somebody else can jump on.
Always appreciate your support, and I know that I've got it, and your contributions, David.
Hey, I have something to ship to you. It should be next Friday.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. All right, David. You have a great night. Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, we got a call coming in from Lisa to talk about the NFL draft. It's nice to talk to the fair sex once in a while. Welcome to the Voice of College Football, Lisa.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes. I thought this was Lisa. That's what it says on my caller ID, on my voice recognition. I guess not.
Oh, I thought I said that. Yeah, it's Mason.
Mason. I should never rely on that thing. Mason, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. How are you? Big fan of the show. Just had a quick question about the NFL draft.
Absolutely.
I just really like up and down. Yeah, I just really up and down drafts from the Raiders. Any chance Jerry said that to become head coach? You think?
Okay. Yeah. I think we got that off the air in time because that guy was a moron. I had my hands on the right volume faders to lose him. All right. We've got a legitimate call coming in. The morons are off the line at this moment. DeAndre, how we doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing good, Mark. How about yourself, man?
I'm good. I enjoyed the NFL draft today.
Well, I don't know if you heard Polian talk, the one that designed the coat, the GM, and he was talking about draft value. And, he would break it down like Reggie Wayne, Adrian James, Peyton Manning, of course, being a one, Reggie Wayne being a one, and Freeney. I think Memphis was a 5th-round pick.
Who was?
But, he was just, I think, Memphis on the opposite side of Freeney.
Oh, yeah.
He was a 5th-round pick.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, what he was saying was that people think that the NFL is just a bunch of everybody's first round that starts. He said that's not necessarily true. He was like a lot of the players that were on the Colts' offensive line were either late round picks, like after the 3rd, or like Jeff Saturday was a free agent draft rookie, and now he's a Hall of Famer. He said not all the time that you're gonna find your best players in the 1st round, 2nd, and 3rd round. And he said he gets tired of listening to people say, "Well, this is the best pick for him." He said that's not how you find your players. He said it's about impossible to find all 1st-round draft picks, a team that have all 1st-round draft picks and they won the Super Bowl. Like the team that's littered with 1st-round draft picks. He said it's about impossible. So I find that very interesting that he said that. But I guess it's true when you look at it. I mean, even if we go to the Patriots and their run, they used to get rid of their guys before they got too old. And put them in there with somebody that you never heard of, like Malcolm Butler, I think it was, that got an interception against Seattle. So I guess a lot of times if you put too much stock into who's up there, because he said the defensive ends, excuse me, when the defensive ends are his most important, was the most important players on the defensive side of the ball. And he said that's where he spent his 1st and 2nd round pick. He said everybody else was outside of Bob Sanders was like a 2nd round pick. So I thought that was very interesting. I don't know if you heard the conversation with him.
No, I didn't. I think Polian was on the NFL Network.
Yeah, NFL Network. I'm sorry. Yeah, he was talking about that. And then I looked at my own Steelers team, like Joey Porter. I don't know what round he was, but Harrison was going to make the Hall of Fame. I don't think he was drafted. I don't think Greg Lloyd was drafted out of Fort Valley State. So that was like, you just got to find that diamond in the rough sometimes, and it's not all these guys that played in the SEC and the ACC and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think we have to understand well, that's very true that you find a number of players that played FCS football or low group of 5 football, and you draft them late, or they don't even get drafted and they contribute and become excellent players. But by and large, the best players still are the high draft picks. Like if you would look at a chart of players who reach all-pro status, Pro Bowl status, who run for 1,000 yards, who become starting quarterbacks, all those things, it's still packed toward the first and second rounds and then into the third round. It's still very much of a curve toward those numbers. It's just like recruiting.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Yes.
Right.
But if you look at any championship team and say, okay, where did these players come from? If we looked at Tampa Bay's team from 2020 and said, okay, these are the Super Bowl champs, let's look at their two deep on offense and defense, we would see, yeah, 5th round picks, undrafted free agents, and so forth. There's only so many they can't fill up a 53-man roster and a two deep on both sides of the ball with first round draft picks. So there are going to be 5th rounders and 6th rounders and undrafted free agents who are going to contribute and be really good players, starting players. That's true.
Right.
But it's still by and large the first and second rounders that become your Hall of Fame caliber players and your impact players in the NFL. It's still skewed toward the first and the second round into the third round.
Yeah, I think he was saying, you're right, because I think he said, like it's like a 48% failure rate for people in the first round or something like that.
Well, what's the failure rate?
I think he said 48%
in the first round.
First round.
What's a failure rate?
Yeah.
What's that?
Well, I don't know. I might have misunderstood what he was talking about. I think he said a failure rate is 48%.
Well, I would like to know what a failure rate means. Does that mean that they didn't make the roster? Well, that couldn't be the case because more than 52% of the first rounders make rosters. So they make the roster.
Yeah. Right. I'm not saying that. Who's the guy? We know we saw Russell. He was a complete failure. There was a guy last year. He was like I think he got drafted by Tennessee. Then they shipped him to Miami, and before the season got started, he got cut. I can't remember the whole conversation, but that's what it was on the lines of that. I guess it could all the movement and stuff like that teams were doing, and people said, well, I don't understand why he moved up to get this player or moved back. And, people look at the draft boards because they look at these shows, and they said because it's not valuable to what you think they need doesn't mean that it's necessarily what they think they need. Like, I'll be honest. I was looking for Pittsburgh to take an offensive lineman. And I know people say they devalue running backs now. When Najee Harris and Pittsburgh couldn't run the ball last year. But I see James Conner play and I see Najee play. And maybe Conner, I'm talking about Conner and college is not as talented as Najee was in college. And I know Conner played defensive end too, but maybe he's just not as talented or fast or quick twitch, and Najee fits that system a little bit better. I don't know. Because when Conner gets stuff, he's getting stuff by players on the NFL level, and Najee hasn't got there yet to see what he can do. But I'm just saying, I thought we were gonna go with offensive lineman, but then you look at the draft. Most of the best offensive linemen were gone. And I would have moved back and tried to get somebody else. But like I said, I'm not getting paid millions of dollars to make those decisions. I'm just a fan. And, and they know what's best. They've been doing it for the last 40-something years I've been on this earth. So they know more better than I do about it. So I just looked at it from that point of view. So, anybody shock you on where they got drafted at?
Man, I would have to go back through. Nobody's coming to mind right now. I should have somebody at the top of my head, but I don't. I really don't.
Why do you think the kid out of Florida, quarterback out of Florida, why do you think he not seen as being an elite quarterback?
Do you think his size has something to do with it? I think it has mostly to do with. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not a big guy, and of course he's not mobile. But then again, Mac Jones isn't either. And I would say he doesn't have elite arm strength. I would think that those are I've not read any scouting reports or analysis on Kyle Trask, but I would think at first glance has something to do with combination of his size, his arm strength, and his lack of mobility.
Oh, wow. Let's see. What do you think about Ian Book going to the Saints? Do you think that's going to be a good fit with Sean Payton?
Well, I think any quarterback's a good fit for Sean Payton, because if I'm a quarterback, I would love to go to the Saints. I would love to go to the 49ers. There's a few destinations, I think, that if you can't succeed as a quarterback there, because there are head coaches there that develop quarterbacks and know how to run an offense to accentuate their quarterback, protect him, and also get the ball out of his hand to playmakers. So Ian Book's not going to have to make a lot of difficult throws if he ever gets the job in New Orleans. Right. He's never going to have to make, on a consistent basis, not going to have to make difficult throws. David Knight says Kyle Trask is 6'5", 240. So again, I was just throwing that out as those are my thoughts about Kyle Trask. I don't know. I've not read it's easy to find a scouting report online to say Kyle Trask scouting report and why the NFL scouts aren't enamored with Kyle Trask. So it's apparently not his size at 6'5", 240. He does not look that big to me out there, but apparently he is.
What do you think about the hype around Davis Mills? I mean, people were thinking that he might be a late round. I mean, Stafford, I haven't seen Stafford play last year, but I mean, were you impressed with him when he was in college?
Did you say Jalen Mills?
David Mills, the Stanford quarterback.
Oh, the Stanford quarterback. Davis Mills. Yeah. Yes. Not especially, but I always consider that a Stanford quarterback they typically have wide receivers who are almost like tight ends. They don't have a lot of speed to stretch the field. Right. Davis Mills didn't really play that much in college. He's got enough tape, but it's not a lot.
Yeah, people were saying that he was going to be pretty good. I'll let you go to his last question. I remember Drew Brees took Purdue to the Rose Bowl, so I'm pretty sure that he was pretty much the only person on that team because he threw 55 passes in one game. I remember. Was that against Ohio State?
Drew Brees threw 83 passes one game. 83 against Wisconsin. Drew Brees' big game against Ohio State vaulted them to the Rose Bowl. They had a game against Ohio State in West Lafayette, and they were losing with about 3 minutes left, and he threw a beautiful ball. There was a blown coverage, so it wasn't a difficult pass, but he threw a beautiful ball for like a 65-yard touchdown to win the game against Ohio State. And Purdue, actually, that year they went to the Rose Bowl, they tied for the Big Ten championship. They didn't win it outright, but that was before there was a conference championship game, and there was a 3-way tie, and they got to go to the Rose Bowl.
Was that the 2003 year?
That was 2000.
Oh, okay. I was wondering. I know. I'm looking at it now online. So they must have they lost to Washington State. Who did Washington? No, that was
Washington.
Yeah.
Washington, the Huskies. Marcus Tuiasosopo was their quarterback. They finished 11-1, number 3 in the country.
That was a weird year because it looked like Northwestern finished. It looked like Northwestern, Michigan, and Purdue.
Yes.
All finished tied.
6-2, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was kind of odd, but
Davis Mills. Davis Mills only played 13 games in college. I just pulled up Davis Mills. He played 13 games in college. I don't even think he started all those games.
Oh, wow. Yeah, but I know a lot of hype was around him, but like you said, it's hard to judge what Purdue does because of the lack of receivers they have sometimes. I mean, they're more of I'm going to run the ball down your throat, 2 tight ends and stuff like that. I wonder what position Emmett Smith's going to play. Tight end?
Who's going to play tight end? I'm sorry.
I think Emmett Smith's son plays tight end out there at Stanford. He either plays tight end or he plays another position. But I can't remember. I can't remember where Emmett Smith's son plays. I know he was a top. He was a top recruit.
Emmett Smith. I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah.
E.J. Smith is his son.
Oh, okay.
He hasn't played much yet.
Right. Yeah. So, but all right, Mark, man, I was just checking in with you, man. I hope you don't get no more crazy calls tonight.
I appreciate it, DeAndre.
Uh-huh.
You have a good night.
All right, man. Take care.
Thank you.
You too.
All right. Next up, Jeff wants to talk about the NFL draft. So that's why we're here. We'll talk about anything concerning college football. I know that Nebraska, Minnesota, and Notre Dame and others had spring games today. I didn't get a chance to see any of those. I've got them DVR'd, so we will take your comments on those as well. Hey, Jeff, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. Hey, Mark, how are you doing?
Good. What's going on?
Yeah, so just had like 3 quick points. First off, I wanted to say that I'm a big Washington football team fan, and because of that, when we selected Jamin Davis in the first round, I was a little bit underwhelmed just because I thought, Christian Darrisaw would have been the better pick, and I thought we reached a little bit. But looking at film, what do you see? I think he could be good fit in Ron Rivera's team. Like, what have you seen?
Washington's first pick. Who'd they select?
Jamin Davis, the linebacker out of Kentucky.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got to tell you that I didn't have a strong opinion about that selection one way or the other. I thought not that he couldn't turn out to be an excellent player, but wasn't that a bit of a reach? I don't think he was projected anywhere close to that, was he?
Yeah, that's what I saw. Like I saw second, third round grade, and Ron Rivera said in his interview later that day that they saw their guy and got him, and like I understand that to a point, but I just thought it was like a little bit of a reach where he maybe could have been there in the second round.
Yeah, and especially at the linebacker spot, that seems to be kind of the running back spot of the defense, where it's becoming a bit devalued, trying to get those guys off the field and not being as prominent with all the passing going on. Yeah, I didn't know a whole lot about him until, I'm sorry, I was just going to say I didn't know a whole lot about him until later in the season, watching Kentucky play a few times and then focusing on a few guys that were projected toward the NFL draft in their bowl game against NC State, and I know that he had a nice game there.
Right. So I can't help, and maybe this is my bias creeping in, but I can't help but think today, the Eagles, I still think, are a little bit of a mess. They definitely got better. The Cowboys defense, they selected a lot of defensive players, but I don't think they could be able to stop a nosebleed. And then the Giants are quietly rounding out their team, but still have Daniel Jones. Am I wrong to think that we're still the favorite in that division?
Are you sure that you are the favorite? I understand that you won the division, but it was obviously a mess last year. I don't know necessarily that the Washington football team proved to be the best team. You technically won the division. Don't the Cowboys have the best talent across the board?
I would admit that the Cowboys have the best offense in the division, but defensively, there's a ton of question marks. Leighton Vander Esch can't stay healthy.
Yeah, I would also question necessarily Jalen Hurts being a long-term answer at quarterback for Philadelphia. I don't think that's necessarily the case.
That's fair. And then, the final thing I wanted to get your take on was, to me, it was I guess the word is failure, not taking a shot at Jamie Newman in the later rounds. Like, do you think he was worth taking in 6th or 7th round as a developmental guy to sit behind Fitzpatrick? Because Fitzpatrick isn't the long-term answer. So to me, it was Jamie Newman sitting behind, learning, and maybe one day eventually become a starter. Because I think he has upside.
Yeah, he's got upside. He's got a strong enough arm. He's mobile, and he's a big guy. So he's got the NFL body. he had a very uneven career in that, of course, he's playing at Wake Forest. I really wanted to see him play at Georgia to see what he would do with better talent around him, but also playing better talent in the SEC week to week. And what was kind of strange about his career at Wake Forest is the year that he took over the starting spot when Sam Hartman was hurt is he immediately took to the job, and he actually had a game in which he his first start led them to a comeback win against a ranked NC State team on the road against Ryan Finley and company. And he had 3 or 4 final drive game-winning touchdowns that year. So he showed a knack for pulling games out in the fourth quarter against some decent competition. The last one was Memphis in the bowl game. Then the next year, if you really break down his statistics, even though on the surface they looked good, he really tore up the bad teams in the FCS and group of 5 teams in the non-conference, and he played poorly against the better teams in the conference. Again, though, you don't know whether much of that has to do with the talent around him at Wake Forest. But yeah, I really wanted to see him play at Georgia just to see what he could do with that kind of talent on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. I guess one more question for you.
Sure.
Looking at Twitter and Reddit this past couple days with the draft, a lot of people are either really, really for or really, really against just going and getting your guy. What's your philosophy on it? If you were a GM, would you be okay maybe reach on someone if you knew that he was your guy?
You would really have to be sold on a guy. I think you stick to your game plan and stick to your value. And if you're really reaching that much, don't you just consider taking the risk? Again, I think it's almost like playing, in this sense, like playing fantasy football, in that you not only rate your players at each position, but you rate the gaps between players. So you know that I need one of these 3 running backs because after running back number 3, there's a huge drop off to running back number 4. But if I get one of the first 3, they're all about the same. And then if I got to fall to number 4, well, 4 through 8 are all pretty much the same guy. And it's almost the same thing there, assessing your needs, but also knowing that there's 6 corners out there at this stage in the draft that I'm comfortable with, and they're all pretty much the same player. So maybe I go get something else over here because I really like this wide receiver's potential, because I'm still going to get one of these 6 cornerbacks the next round. I think you need to weigh those kind of options. But if you're really sold on a guy, especially once you get past about the 4th round, because the percentages just drop considerably in regards to the projection on those guys becoming starters in the NFL, it's pretty much an uphill battle once you get past the 4th round of those guys being starters. Not that there's not a ton of starters in the NFL past the 4th round, but by percentage, it's very low. That, yeah, you take a shot to go get the guy that you're really sold on.
All right, thanks, Mark.
Hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. All right, more calls coming in. We got Jordan, the Pitt Panthers. Let's see what Jordan's got for us. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mark. This is actually Talkers Pitt.
Oh, my goodness. Why do I even go through this voice recognition? Talk is Pitt. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. I decided to use my real name so it could be easier for you to identify me.
Okay. That's good either way. We are good either way.
But
you guys had some boys drafted the last couple of days.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had 6 players drafted, which is the most we've had, I think, in maybe I want to say 6-7 years. We usually only get 2 or 3, maybe 1 if we get lucky. We've only had 1 for the past 2 or 3 seasons get drafted, and 2 of them went to Minnesota. Jalen Twyman and Patrick Jones went to Minnesota. Rashad Weaver went to Tennessee. DeMar Hamlin went to Buffalo. Who am I missing? So that's 4. Paris Ford didn't even get drafted, actually. And that honestly surprised me because we didn't think he would even. Well, we thought he would get drafted, but not as early as he'd hoped. We didn't think Jalen Twyman would get drafted, and he did.
And that's what confuses people about the NFL draft. Paris Ford, a couple of years ago, was considered, and you correct me if I'm wrong because you're the Pitt expert, but based on what I know, he was the most highly sought after and the most touted player from a talent perspective that I knew of on the defense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, true. Well, what hurt his chances in the draft is decided to opt out with only like maybe 4 or 5 games left of the season, which we weren't happy with. And not only that, his 40 time was ridiculously bad. It was a 4.8.
Yeah.
So that hurt. And I mean, I think he should have gotten drafted. But at the same time, I mean, I don't really like players who opt out halfway through the season. I can understand why Jalen Twyman did it because 5 of his family members actually died from COVID. But I don't get it. I don't get Paris Ford's excuse. Trying to think. There's a couple other people I'm missing that I know got drafted from Pitt. Jimmy Morrissey went to the Raiders, and I think that's it. I can't remember who else. And I'm just great that we Green Bay, my favorite team in the NFL, finally started listening and went out and got Amari Rogers from Clemson. And we finally got our defensive tackle, who I'm not honestly too familiar with at all, but he was from Florida.
Tadarius Slayton. Yeah.
We got him. We also got Josh Myers from Ohio State.
Yes.
We got plenty of players, and for once I can actually call in and, try not to overhype the Pitt Panthers.
How is Jordan Whitehead doing in the NFL?
He's starting. I believe he started. Actually, he picked off Aaron Rodgers, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure he picked off Aaron Rodgers.
Okay, that's not bad.
He should be starting. I'm trying to think. The only Pitt Panther that I know of that's actually starting is Quan Williams, the corner from San Francisco.
Okay. Anything else you got for me? Talk is Pitt.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you.
Oh, okay, yeah. Quan Williams is the only Pitt Panther that I know that's starting. But no, I just wanted to give a big congratulations to the Pitt Panthers that are starting, and West Virginia sucks.
All right. I would expect no less. You are playing them coming up, I believe, in the next few seasons.
Yes, we are.
Very good.
2022, the first game of the season.
Beautiful. All right. We appreciate the call. Have a good night.
You too. Good night.
All right. We've got a call coming in here from our man, Kevin from Dallas, Georgia, talking about the SEC. Kevin, how you doing tonight?
Good evening, Mark. How you doing this evening?
I'm good.
Well, just wanted to just say exhibits A through D, the SEC, it means more. I mean, those only 3 words that could, adequately state as far as when it comes to football. Now, that ball that bounces the correct way, those accolades could be given to the other Big 5 schools. But as far as when it comes to football, it just means more as far as the SEC. Wanted to give a little information to DeAndre in reference to Najee Harris. If Najee Harris was an Alabama running back pre-Kiffin, pre-Sarkisian, the best way to define those running backs would be, I don't know, Mark probably wouldn't be familiar with this, but some of the listeners may, and that is as far as may pop tires, as in as soon as you go around the corner, they may pop. Saying that when it comes to pre-Kiffin, pre-Sarkisian running back, DeAndre, they had no tread on the tires as far as those running backs. You know, getting into the modern era, once Coach Saban decided to make that change as far as offensive philosophy, hey, the max that you're going to get normally, you know, as far as the first Heisman winner, not the first Heisman winner, but as far as Derrick Henry notwithstanding, all backs pretty much after Derrick Henry, and Derrick Henry truly marks as an anomaly, because normally when it comes to all those running backs, as far as when Saban first started off, hey, they ran them into the ground. But you know, as far as once Kiffin and Sarkisian got in, then it's a matter that they use, quote, a bevy of backs. And so that being the case, Najee Harris has plenty of tread on the tires, DeAndre. And as far as the Mills kid, Mark, you know, the thing is, as far as the Stanford quarterback, the reason why he has so little tape is, what's the old saying as far as the NFL, you can't help the club from the tub? And that was his issue. I mean, he had not only injury concerns, but an extensive injury resume. So potential out of the wazoo, but the thing is, just, hey, when it comes to being able to play, he couldn't play because he was off injured.
Yeah, in this last season, they only played 6 games at Stanford as well. So he would have played, had he stayed healthy, played another 7 games in a full season.
And want to go back for a second, Mark, in reference to University of Florida quarterbacks from caveman times up into the modern era. And wouldn't it be safe to say that the only, quote, pro-ready quarterback would have been Steve Spurrier, and it seemed like all the other quarterbacks, including Trask, would have been system quarterbacks?
I'm not coming up with any quarterbacks in the 80s prior to Spurrier who played in the NFL. And then once Spurrier got there, they had a run of quarterbacks who would reach the NFL, and none of them played well. Jesse Palmer, Danny Werfel, Trey Dean. Who else am I thinking of? I've got one other guy.
And Kerwin Bell would have just only been just a average to above average college quarterback, correct?
Who's that?
Kerwin Bell. He would have just been an average to
Kerwin Bell,
college quarterback.
Yes. And actually, the guy that lasted the longest in the NFL was the guy, Shane Matthews, who played in the first SEC championship game. He played for a long time in the NFL, but he wasn't a starter most of the time. If he was a starter, it was because somebody was hurt or he played on an awful team. He played like 13 or 14 years in the NFL. So you had Shane Matthews, Jesse Palmer, Danny Werfel, of course, played extremely well at the college level, but it didn't. And that was easy to see that wasn't going to transition. He did not have anything close to a strong enough arm to play in the NFL. Terry Dean, and there's one other guy that I'm not coming up with, early 2000s, that's slipping my mind before. And then Spurrier wasn't there after 2002. So then you had under Ron Zook and Urban Meyer, no NFL quarterbacks except for whatever you're going to consider the 12 or 13 starts from Tim Tebow. And he didn't succeed. Wasn't necessarily given a extended opportunity, but he didn't succeed. And since then, Will Grier. Now, where's he bouncing around? I thought that he was going to have some kind of a little bit more interest than he did. I think he was drafted late, but I don't know that Will Grier is on an NFL roster right now. And of course, he didn't play most of his football at Florida. He played at West Virginia. And now we've got Kyle Trask, and we got Felipe Franks, who just signed a free agent contract, but I wouldn't expect him to be much in the NFL. Yeah, Florida's quarterback history looks very much like Ohio State's quarterback history, if not worse.
Ouch. And one other parting comment, Mark, and it's just as far as listening to the gentleman that stated as far as the previous caller regarding the University of Pittsburgh and having 6 NFL draftees this year. Would it be safe to say that, and is the coach still at Pittsburgh, Narduzzi?
Yes.
Wouldn't it be safe to say that maybe he should be on a seat that at the very least should be lukewarm? Because how in the world can you have 6 draftees this year, Mark, and you don't bring a better product to the field that they had this past season?
You mean losing to Notre Dame by 6 touchdowns wasn't a good product? They scored a field goal in that game.
Yes, 3 beat 0, I guess.
Yeah, 45-3 against Notre Dame. Yeah, Pitt they're not a great football team. No, they look like they're going to go 6-6 or 7-5 forever, and that's what they are. But yeah, they kept churning out NFL draft selections, most of them on defense. And by the way, David Knight let us know that Will Grier is with Carolina, and I just looked him up. He actually played 2 games last year, started 2 games for Carolina, and had a rough go of it. No touchdowns and 4 picks.
Wow. Well, I thought it would have been a matter he was, I was thinking that as far as Grier was concerned, that he may have gotten blackballed because of the performance-enhancing drugs he had allegedly or actually used. So I didn't know whether that might have been a matter of that might have short-tailed or diverted his pro career, but apparently not. So, I mean, it's great that the young man has been given a second or third chance. So.
Yeah, I don't know that the standards at Pitt are just so high that Pat Narduzzi's not going to be able to just win 7 games there forever. Although our guy Joseph Barrett's commenting on the live chat that Narduzzi's tenure at Pitt is on life support.
Well, that would have to be the case, Mark. How in the world can you have 6 NFL draftees this year, and you, wow. I mean, I was just really blown away. But then, in another respect, Mark, would you have to say that across the board, when you look back at this draft, schools that you would not have thought that had 4+ draftees this year, how in the world was the product not better on the field? Because didn't South Carolina have at least 4+ draftees this year?
Oh, yeah. South Carolina comes to mind. A 2-8 team last year, a team that went from, they pretty much peaked under Will Muschamp when they beat Michigan in the bowl game in 2017. They were 9-4, and it looked like he had something going there, and they slid downhill ever since then. But South Carolina usually does pretty well in the NFL draft. The other team that comes to mind, not nearly as bad as South Carolina, but in the same division, Missouri had a lot of players drafted. I don't know what the final total was, but it seemed like half their defense got drafted and a couple offensive linemen and their running back, Larry Roundtree.
So that would easily have to be, I would say, Missouri had to be at least 6 then. So.
And to back up what our guy Joseph Barrett's saying on the live chat, it's not so much that Pitt has underachieved necessarily, but being in the division that they are, and for as bad as that division's been, now it might be improved going forward as Mac Brown's doing some things in North Carolina, and Miami appears to finally be progressing in the right direction. But for the last 7 or 8 years, the division's been awful. And so there was an opportunity to own that division and win 8 or 9 or 10 games a year because the competition was as bad as it was.
Well, Mark, hey, we speaking on behalf of those in the chat as well as those that are viewing the program, hey, we appreciate as far as the yeoman's work over the past 48 hours. And as always, continue doing an excellent job. And hey, we look forward to speaking with you soon.
Appreciate that, Kevin. You have a good night.
All right, you do likewise now.
All right, folks, we appreciate everybody jumping on here again for an NFL draft wrap up. And for those of you who watch on a regular basis, you know that we talk college football here every day. So the NFL draft is a little bit out of my realm, but I do love the draft. And I do, of course, watch the college game as much as anybody around, I hope. At least I attempt to cover it as well as everyone. And then also, and so for those folks that called up maybe that don't normally watch and saw that we had a live stream on concerning the NFL draft and had questions about specific teams out there, I do love the NFL. I do watch the NFL, but I know about that much compared to what I used to know about the NFL just because I can't keep up with it. I just enjoy watching it just as entertainment, not to follow it and track it and memorize everything. And so I don't have a working knowledge of NFL rosters and what teams need per se. We also, again, as I mentioned a couple times, had a big day of spring games with Notre Dame, Nebraska, and Minnesota and others. I don't want to shortchange the likes of Virginia and a few others out there who concluded their spring sessions. So I will get to work on those. And we're going to start now that spring season is behind us. We're going to start working on our player rankings headed toward 2021. So I've started to look at Big 12 and ACC quarterbacks, and we will provide you with our rankings of as many positions as we can possibly get to over the next few months. And any arguments, any debates you want us to solve or try to solve, I will take my shot. For example, the Florida State and Miami fans that we have in these live streams every week during our Seminoles and Canes call-in shows, or live streams, I should say, that constantly battle over this 2001 Miami versus 2013 Florida State mythical game that would be played between undefeated national championship teams. I have started to line up the teams, and I will compare them and give you my best projection on who fielded the better team. Joseph, Mark, would you please speculate on why Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah slide way down? I don't have a whole lot on that. I know that the guys that I listened to had him projected higher, to your point there. I do think that sometimes when somebody slides, it's not necessarily that they're not being evaluated properly or that teams don't like them. But think about it this way. If a guy's supposed to be, let's say, a top 20 pick, and there's a lot of teams within that 15 to 25 range, that's where he's projected as just sheer talent. He's supposed to be a 15 to 25 range player. So think of it this way. When McShay, Kuiper, those guys, whomever your favorite draft analyst is, they will rate these players and they'll give you a talent projection. Boom, boom, boom. Here's the best on the board. But as you match it up against the teams, it doesn't always shake out. You could be the 10th best player on the board, but you're not necessarily going to slot as the 10th player drafted. So for him, if he was projected to be a 15th to 25th rated player, something in that range, and all those teams may have had him high on their board, but he may have just missed that, and they saw somebody else who they liked better, either based on their overall talent projection or based on positional need. And a player can slide quickly. I also think this. I think this would bear out. If you go year to year on NFL draft projections by these guys and not looking at their big board, but what they say and what they write about particular players, like this guy's a potential first rounder. This guy's a mid-second rounder. This guy's a late first round. If you added all that up, I guarantee you they've got 50 dudes, 60 guys that are rated as first rounders. Well, there's not 60 picks in the first round. There's 32 picks in the first round. So they have, and then if you listen to the analysis, you'll hear the same thing. They'll be deep into the third round and they'll tell you, I had a first round grade on this guy. I had a first round grade on that guy. And it's not like one or two guys. It's like a dozen guys. So I think they're packing high on these guys, and it doesn't necessarily, their ratings don't necessarily correspond with the number of slots that are available. It would be like me saying, I'm going to analyze the Big Ten. Well, I think Ohio State's an 11-win team, and Michigan's a 10-win team, and Penn State's a 9-win team, and I started throwing out all these numbers. And they added up to 70% winning percentage. Well, I might think Wisconsin's a 9-win team, and Iowa's a 9-win team, and Minnesota's an 8-win team, and all this. But if you add it all together, it doesn't make any sense because somebody's got to lose the games. So it's the same thing. If you're saying all these guys are first rounders, but there's only 32 slots, and then a bunch of guys jump up who were projected second and third rounders, who were liked more by certain franchises, well, that's going to push down a number of the other guys. I also think that the linebacker position has been somewhat devalued. I think that would play out if you look at recent drafts. David's got it right here. And David's a Notre Dame guy. He says Owusu Koromoa is a tweener, like a utility man. He could play free safety or safety, I should say, linebacker. Can edge rush, rover. The NFL does not use rovers well, as far as I know. Nate, good to see you. What do you got here, John? Mark, do you remember the 1977 Sugar Bowl when Pitt defeated Georgia to win the national title? That was just before my time. That was the 76 season, the 77 Sugar Bowl, January 1st. Tony Dorsett, Pitt beat Georgia 27-3. I remember that score because I remember most scores, even if I wasn't there to watch it. And of course, yes, Pitt and Johnny Majors won the national championship. Was Rick Tricano the quarterback for that team? All right, good stuff, everyone. I'm going to go to work on a bunch of videos. I'm debating whether to watch the Nebraska and Minnesota spring games and the Notre Dame spring game, because I don't know how many people are interested. All right, we're going to have rankings. I have a list that's a mile long of all sorts of positional breakdowns and rankings and comparisons and debates to go through. So we will get to as much as possible, and we'll continue to let you know that we will be here. The Nebraska Channel faithful. Whatever you're telling us there, Mike, please, I will, it's a reminder to me to let people know out there that we've got a Nebraska Channel. So there's two basic reasons and why you would, there's three basic reasons why you would go to the Nebraska Channel and subscribe. Number one would be you're a Nebraska fan. So please do that. And I will let you know that most of the content, I'm always transparent here. I always tell you like it is. I'm not going to sell you anything that's not the truth, is that The majority of Nebraska content that you're going to find there is the same content that you're going to find here. It's just repackaged, although I do break down some recruiting profiles once players commit that you will not find here. So if you're a Nebraska fan and you care about recruiting in particular, and then there's some other content that we provide there, like game by game win projections and probabilities that you won't find here. So if you're a Nebraska fan, please subscribe to our Nebraska channel. Point number 2 would be if you're just a college football nut and you want to subscribe to everything possible, then please subscribe. And then also number 3, if you just want to help us build this network of channels, please subscribe to any of the channels that are under 1,000 subs. And that would be the next one in line. Oregon and Nebraska, we need you. So please subscribe to the Nebraska and Oregon channels. Yes, Joseph, the Notre Dame spring game was on the Peacock Network. I have no idea where to find that. All right, but at this point, I would expect that the game would be on YouTube somewhere. All right, everyone, we appreciate everybody stopping by. I might be live tomorrow. I doubt it. Most likely, I'm going to be providing some semblance of Notre Dame, Nebraska, Minnesota, and also we've got some Iowa to talk about as well, and probably some profiles of NFL draftees from those teams as well. Cheryl, thank you so much. David, Joseph, and others. Mike 3883, Christopher, thank you so much for stopping by as well. Lewis, we always appreciate you sharing the videos out on social media, and I would ask everyone else to do the same. If you enjoy the content, others will as well. Just know that people that follow you on Twitter and Facebook have absolutely no idea that we are here talking college football with you every day. So please share the content out on social media, and we will see you very soon.